Welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport.
Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. Just 8 days before the opening round of the 2020 Formula 1 season, let's take a look at my predictions for the year ahead. You can only be wrong so many times, possibly all the time, but it's fun to make these crazy predictions before the season starts to eventually look back over them at season's end and wonder what the hell I was smoking if I thought that was coming true. And this is an audience participation kind of video. So leave your thoughts and predictions in the comments below. I'd love to read through them and laugh. With that said, let's begin our look at what I think will happen during the 2020 Formula 1 season. In 10th place, I suspect Williams will again be the team trailing the field, but I do think they'll make gains. A few more points than one would be a good start, with both drivers getting their first points in Formula 1. It is a weird thought that Nicholas Latifi is the only driver making his Formula 1 debut in Melbourne, and I think this year will be a learning curve for the Canadian Formula 2 runner-up. But I think he is a good driver and he'll get his head down, maybe score some points later in the year. Russell, I imagine, with a year already under his belt, will still be a top dog, at Williams at least. But I imagine another tough year, with Latifi 20th and Russell 18th in the drivers' standings. For 9th, let's go with Haas. The most confusing team on the grid. They at times looked like they had a real pace in the car last year, just to fall backwards through the field during the actual races. You know the bit where it's important not to drop back? Whatever the reason for this, the team need to shape up and give their very experienced drivers something to fight with, and not just each other. For a new team who did so well messing with the big guns when they first joined the grid, to the absolute mess that saw them have joke sponsors and crashes in the pit lane last year, Haas are a team that needs to buck their ideas up, but I think both drivers will struggle, and it's up to Haas to prove me wrong. I think 17th for Grosjean and 16th for Magnussen. I can't tell if 8th place is a bad thing for AlphaTauri. Unlike many of their midfield rivals, they did have a couple of podiums last year and beat Racing Point and Alfa Romeo in the overall constructors standings. But at the end of the day, they are Red Bull's B team. And with a new livery that everyone but me loves and a new name and brand to promote, I think this year will be tougher for them. I think the midfield is going to tighten up a bit this year, and it's whether or not Kvyat and Gasly can out-scrap their rivals. Unfortunately, both are prone to bad races. Kvyat especially has a reputation for crashing into people, and as the year wears on, I think they are going to drop behind a bit. They'll probably end the year close together in points, and I'm going to say Kvyat 14th and Gasly 13th. 7th for Alfa Romeo would be a small improvement on 2019, but it hinges on the performances of Antonio Giovinazzi. All through last year we saw occasional good performances, all separated by really bad ones for the floundering Italian. And as I have already said a couple of times, if he doesn't improve, he's likely to be replaced by the waiting Robert Kubica. But Kimi Räikkönen, in what may be his final season and a year in which he becomes the driver to enter more races than anyone in the history of Formula 1, has the experience to keep them afloat. And I think will score low but often throughout the year. That will be enough to drag Alfa Romeo above AlphaTauri, with Giovinazzi struggling in 19th and Kimi in 12th. 6th for Renault may be an insane choice, but I do worry about the French manufacturer, especially if they decide to leave the sport again. They just seem to struggle when it matters. Reliability is a worry, but they do have two very good drivers behind the wheel who will score them points. I don't see Renault joining the top 3 teams this year, and honestly I think they'll struggle to hold off Racing Point. But hopefully that doesn't put them off too much and they stay with it in 2021. Ocon is signed on for next year. Ricciardo isn't, and it depends on good performances from the car if they want him to stay on. I expect Ocon to finish 11th on his first season back and Ricciardo just in front in 10th. Probably worth a podium at some point. 5th for Racing Point. In their final year before becoming Aston Martin and hopefully being a good advert for the classic brand. As Daddy Stroll is paying most of the bills for both entities now, and much hope will be on Lance Stroll improving and becoming more consistent. I think they're pissing against the wind though, because honestly, he just isn't that good. He's had a couple of good results, but generally he struggles near the back end of the midfield and doesn't score many points. Luckily, Sergio Perez is on hand to do that for them. The Mexican is entering his 10th year in Formula 1 and has always been a quick driver at the top end of the midfield. Expect another good year from Perez, as high as 8th, Stroll lagging some way behind in 15th, but enough to give Racing Point a boost into 5th. McLaren finishing 4th was a good result last year, and I expect them to maintain that position this year. I don't think they'll improve into the top 3 just yet. That's nothing to be ashamed of. A couple of years ago they were absolutely terrible, struggling to finish races, let alone in the points. They have 2 very good young drivers who are only going to get better from here, and starting from next year they'll have Mercedes power. For now they have to make do with being the best of the rest, and they seemed comfortable in that position last year. I do expect Sainz to be a little bit ahead of the younger Norris, but Norris will finish closer in 9th. Sainz meanwhile I think will drop behind the second Red Bull and finish 7th. Albon with a full year in a Red Bull should surely finish ahead of the lower class teams, you'd think at least. Red Bull will finish 3rd again, that is unless Albon gets his act together and catches up to the Ferraris to support his teammate. I didn't see that happening. I think Albon was more reliable and consistent than Gasly, but he didn't overly impress. Denied his first ever podium by a crazed Hamilton at Brazil, his year just kind of petered out, finishing behind Sainz and Gasly. Unless he starts getting into the thick of things and taking points off the Ferraris, rather than Ferrari taking points off Ferrari, expect Red Bull just to be slightly behind the prancing horses, despite the best efforts of Max Verstappen, who I think will finish runner-up in 2020. Meanwhile, Alexander Albon will improve a bit and get above the McLarens and into 6th, just a bit off the Ferraris. Ferrari themselves will finish 2nd. They have the 2nd best car and the 2nd best overall driver lineup, and have 2nd written all over them. That is of course as long as they stop crashing into each other, making disastrous strategy decisions, and generally imploding at every race. Leclerc has shown he is capable of running at the front so early into his Formula 1 career. Again, he is another driver who's going to keep on improving. Whilst Vettel isn't the man he once was, he is another capable of picking up decent points and supporting his teammate in the fight to catch Mercedes. But who will win the inter-team fight? Well, I kind of expect Ferrari to side with old boy Vettel, maybe try to build a sort of hierarchy to stem some of the infighting. So I'll go Vettel 4th and Leclerc 5th, unless Leclerc proves without a doubt he is Ferrari's #1 driver, which is of course possible. So yeah, Mercedes are going to win again. I expect very little to change. This is going to be a dull year at the front. Lewis Hamilton will probably win 10 races at least. Bottas will start well and then crash a couple of times and people will question whether he should be there. Mercedes will storm away in the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships. Plastic fans will talk about Lewis being the F1 GOAT, and I'll make crappy videos on the internet complaining about it. Remember to subscribe, by the way. 3 more subscribers by next week would be great. If there is something that will change, I don't think Bottas can hold off Verstappen this year, so I pick him to finish 3rd, but there will be no stopping Lewis Hamilton, who will probably be safe in the championship by round 12, and we can all look on to 2021. So there are my predictions. Am I wrong? Does the sun rise in the east? I know at least 75% of these are going to be incorrect, and Kevin Magnussen will take the driver's title by 1,000 points, and I'll have egg on my face. Whatever happens, I'm looking forward to it, and I would love to read all of your thoughts, so throw them down below and subscribe whilst you're there. Other than that, enjoy the next 8 days and have a good one.